The Tony Hawk series has been one of my favorites. Obviously, sad it disappeared. I always thought it'd be like Madden; it'd be here every year. But maybe you guys can help make that a reality again and bring it back.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited for this. I don't know what you call it, a remaster, a reimagining. What is your term there at Vicarious?
We call it. We pride ourselves in calling it like a VV remaster. Really, like we just do what we think is best. Crash really taught us what the fans want. Listen to the fans. Listen to internal fans, and you'll do good. And that requires a lot of tough conversations, which I'm sure John Dobbie will remember about getting things right.
I know there is a controversy on the terminology, but I do look at it as a remaster as well. It's like, we are honoring the legacy and just trying to, bring it to this current console generation and beyond, just pouring as much love as we can into it and, just honoring it and hopefully bringing a whole, honoring the fans and then bringing a whole new audience along with it.
So as you go back and look at these old games, obviously PlayStation 1 era, you don't have a lot of geometry or items in the world. They're pretty barren, which works for skating, right? You want clean lines, you want clear avenues where you can go. When you went back and looked at those levels with the lens for today, what was one of the things that kind of jumped out to you? That were you focused on adding more detail to it, or did you want to try to maintain exactly the same kind of the landscape?
Gameplay is king, and even my experience. I worked at Neversoft and made 3 Tony Hawks earlier, and it's just like if the game isn't fun, no one's going to play it, and no one's going to even look at the visuals. So again, it's like the geometry is sacred. You want people. I mean, Leo could speak more about this, but it's like it should be the fans with muscle memory should be able to just pick it up. But when it comes to the visuals, you were touching on that. It's like just the nature of the era of those games. It's not like they weren't trying. It's just like they could only do so much with geometry, with texel or texture resolution. So the things that we would on the art side that we would have to solve was definitely more on the scale side. Like you go into the gym in school, for instance, and be like, that's one basketball arena, and it's like in reality like the basketball hoop would be like 10 feet wide, and like as you're playing back then, it's like that looks cool, then that's fun, and it didn't matter. But when you're trying to bring everything into this realism, it's like no, the reality is you can fit 2 basketball I arena, with like the paint on. And
yeah, so like I really have an ally with John. Like he's a great art director, and I have the 20-year history with Tony Hawk. My very first project in the industry was Tony Hawk 1 as a tester. Like my first day.
Wow.
Hours at Activision, boom. And I was a skater, right? Like I'm still a skater. It was like magic. And when you play that game, it's gameplay is king. And I'm a level designer at heart. I'm the lead designer of this project, but gameplay is king, collision is king. Anything you interact with, it's got to be meaningful, right? But at the same time, like the visuals, it's the fantasy, right? Like this needs to look like Burnside, the skate park that this, someday I will visit in Portland. The school looks like a typical high school, in Southern California, and you just got to do that. And there's a lot of back and forth between design and art. And I do think that this project has learned from a lot of those discussions in the earlier projects. Like, how do we get the detail without sacrificing the flow and the gameplay, right? And I'm very happy with where we are. Seeing some of the early concept of like the reimagined school, I was like, whoa, this is way beyond my expectations. I hope they nail it, as long as they don't mess with the gameplay, right?
Yeah.
And they did. Like I play school right now, and it's like going back 20 years. It's like going back to young Leo. It's like, dude, you don't even know. This is only 100 polys now. Just wait till you see like 1 million polys with all the crazy normal maps and all the cool lighting, It's amazing.
The school's where I learned to wall ride.
Yeah.
I remember that well.
Yeah.
But when you add in the revert, and you're kind of stretching out the combos, that obviously changes the scoring parameters and the cap, right? Like that's got to
Yep.
go way up.
Yep.
Can you talk about that, both in terms of mission balancing, and then also just did that affect the layout of the worlds themselves too, or the levels?
One of the things is the cool part is if you go back and play the original game, they stand the test of time. They are good games.
Mhm.
And so like, hey, don't mess with the formula, man. You got a good foundation. Like if you're gonna change something, you gotta know what you're doing. And that's my mantra to my team. It's like if you want to come and tell me like, hey Leo, I want to move this building left or right. It's like, why do you want to do that? Do you see that? What's the new flow? Like, how are you going to do that? And the cool part about the manual and the revert, it's that they fit right away. They fit right in. Like, it's just like, it's all about the player expression. And our job is really to rebalance those scores. Like, it's got to feel like high score, pro score, 6 score. They got to feel like that reach, you know? And that's the intention. So we do go through a rebalancing process of our progression.
For sure. And on that point, you guys talk about how you want fans with muscle memory of the first 2 games to feel right at home in here. Is that, and those games are 20 years old, and while they hold up, like, is it you talked about the collisions, is that how you guys are modernizing, or like, are you just like gameplay is king and that's the holy grail and we don't mess with that, or are there different modernizations that you guys are working on through that?
Yeah, I mean, John can go on to the art approach on things, but gameplay wise, if someone comes over to me and says like, "Hey, man, this is an improvement," and it's a clear improvement, I'm not going to say no to that,
For
right?
sure.
Especially with current sensibilities of players and expectations.
Mhm.
But we got to keep the core, right? We got to keep the timing, like the look of the animation and the timing is king. That's another thing. Like you don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
But our animation team, they've done a phenomenal job at introducing all the nuances and like just how it looks, how you land, how you bail. They've gone again above and beyond what I expected, and it just looks awesome. Like I can't wait for you guys to bail for the first time on a vert, landing back on vert and bailing and landing on your knees. Like that's never been seen in the franchise, and that's just awesome to me.
I think we could talk about like your example of wall ride. Like that is definitely a major challenge, and it's been since I can remember working on, American Wasteland stuff. It's like, you want to make as much of the level skatable as possible, and you need to layer in that fidelity, right? And what's that mean? It's like windows are cut in, ledges sometimes. So they're definitely like, working with design, we came up with a formula of like there's so many inches you can go in and out of a wall to make it still feel wall rideable. So sometimes columns we're probably pushing in a little bit more than an artist would normally like, but it's like again, it's in respecting the gameplay. It's like again, and to me, like I mean, being a long-term fan and working on the franchise, like let's face it, you want to like there's the muscle memory, but then to a new player, it's like finding those lines, and it's like once you realize the surface is wall rideable, it's wall rideable, right? So it's on the art side, we make sure we don't like have stuff sticking out and making it look like, oh, I can't do what I want to do. But the game also is just like, how do I skate this thing? You know what I mean? Like once you do it once, you're like, that's skatable. You know what I mean? And you go from there. So there definitely is like, that balance of, like we want to make it look as real as possible and not also just be like spoon feeding as well, right? It's like you still want to feel like you're discovering your own line and being smart and just like having fun. So it's like we need chevrons on every quarter pipe, but we still do the things like highlighting, like painting some grindable rails a different color and just helping them pop on the environment as well to help the player. Because I mean, in this new PBR world, everything sits in the scene. The characters sit in the scene. The lines sit in the scene. So it's definitely, can we do things with lighting? Can we do things with like color to just help the player navigate a little bit easier in the level?
For sure.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about that? About giving the levels a new life? Like, I can recall like each level having a very dynamic color. Like, Minneapolis was blue. Like there's just things that stuck out to me. Do they feel like new living places, or are you trying to kind of adhere to the same tones that were established back in the day?
Well, that's a great question, because like if you take a map like Warehouse, even in the franchise, it's been remade I think 9 times already. So some of the things I'm not even looking back at to even the previous 3. It's just like, we're making this game now. We're making it in Albany, New York. I sent the crew to a local warehouse. Get in there. We have enough derelict buildings. Go get photo reference. Let's just do. And I wanted it to be a little bit brighter and again, it's like once you kind of like hone in on, it is going to be a different tape because of the attention to detail and just like building story around it. Like for that one, we made it based around like looked into history. They made fire hydrants in this area that shipped as far across to San Francisco, and like that's the history of this town. So we're like, what's a way of just like hanging some story on the level, expanding on it, and then once you start doing that, like the details, everyone kind of just can buy in, and details start adding on. Like, okay, all the signage in here is like more old timey because it's been abandoned for 40 years, things like that. And then, and it gives example like school, right? We're shipping with school 1 from number 1 and school 2 and two school levels, right? So right off the bat, how do we really separate these two? So school 1 is more like elementary school, more vibrant colors, a little bit cleaner. School 2, we're going a little bit more like the original big building was made in the 50s, the annex 60s, the 70s. And then in school 2, we're also fitting in like Don's Rail, Carlsbad Gap, like these real skate spots that in their own, you should be able to take a thumbnail and go, that looks like, or someone that was been there, they should go like, I feel like I've been here. Like we did our best to, make it feel legit, but then, just giving it that wrapper and that uniqueness that helps it also, to separate, but stand on its own at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, like you said at the beginning, like every level in the franchise has its own identity and look, right? And I think we very much captured that. But again, like what the concept team did with, John's direction, it's just amazing. Like I've been blown away. I've played school many times in the franchise, but this school feels very much unique and new while still capturing the essence of what I used to skate 20 years ago. Same with downtown. You mentioned downtown, and it just looks like a really, nighttime rainy city, which is pretty badass.
Expanding on that a bit, it's like say Venice, right? It's like the pit in Venice has been demolished at this point. So like we're, looking at reference, like getting people to make graffiti, to that us of the era, of the location, and just doing our darndest, just like let's make this look legit. Like you feel like you're going back into a bit of a time machine and just honoring these original locations. Same thing with Skate Street, which is a real park that was in Ventura. It's got a really interesting story where one of the owners that made that place, the mom actually made these giant murals that take up most of the level. And it's like we don't to find reference of it is pretty tough. So sometimes it's like find little bits of reference, and then the actual original game, because I know that they went there to document what it did look like. And then it's weird that the game actually becomes the best reference as how it was actually. So it's cool. Like we're looking at the original textures combined with any photo reference we can find. And then it's having, concept artists repaint that entire mural, considering like how would they paint it with bigger brushes and stuff like that. And just like, this is the entire, like, so, I mean, that's what I want is I want someone that's been there to fire it up and feel like, oh my God, like I've been here. I know it's a Tony Hawk level, and like some stuff is obviously mashed a bit around to make it fun as it can be, but it just really conjures that vibe.
And are you adhering to like the big lines, the ones that people would put together right away in the warehouse going up through the glass thing? And
one of the first things we did was, as soon as we had the game running and we had warehouse, which was to prove out some of our workflows and like our extracting the geometry and all that stuff, we had it up and running fairly quick. and then the skater was up and running. Probably T-posed like early games, and
Was it Bruce Willis? Did you?
No, this is our own engine. Basically, we were just backtrack. But yeah, Bruce Willis was in the original pitch.
Yeah,
Tony Hawk, and I did my first line. I did the line that I did 20 years ago. You go down the ramp, you go up through the secret room, you do a Benihana, you land on the pipe, you go all the way through the whole back, with the hump of the ramp in the warehouse, and you try to hit that wall, and that's the gap, right? That's the massive gap in warehouse. Yep. And I did it, and I sent the video to the team, and I was like, "This is a great start." Like, thumbs up. Yeah. and I did a comparison too with the old game and the new game, and I had them both, and they were frame by frame, matching.
Yeah. Wow. Usually when I hear like a developer's like, we're up in the frame rate, we got it steady, it's running at this resolution. With Tony Hawk, I kind of panicked because I was like, when you really get a good run going and you're flying in that game, it feels like your PlayStation's going to break, right? Like it looks like that game is just ready to just shut down. Like you have pushed that system to the limit. Yep. Has the frame rate changed anything? Has that made any complicated anything, or is it just smoother and easier to execute?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a challenge, but the key, the pillar here is 60 frames per second. That is like, there is nothing under, nothing above. It's just like, that is king, really. Like we say, gameplay is king, consistent frame rate is king. That's something that I learned very early on in my career. I'll take consistent frame rate versus fluctuating, especially when you're in the zone. You don't want to be distracted by a miss of a frame,
Yeah.
And I'll say that quickly, like that is an agreement that art and design had on in the beginning, because it takes both of us to make sure we're living up to that goal. And I think, with my experience working on Call of Duty, multiplayer, like frame, it's like it has to feel good. So yeah, exactly. Like we do everything to get to that goal.
And you talked about having those runs, the main lines, but are you adding anything new into these levels? Are there new secret areas, new lines, new rails, stuff you can hit?
We have new stuff, but we can't really talk about it right now. We do the foundation of the levels, like I said, it stands the test of time, right? So you don't want to mess with it, and anything we add is really very piecemeal, especially if like art is really passionate about like, hey, can we stage this, cop car this way versus that way or whatever, as long as it doesn't sacrifice anything around it, we're totally cool with it. So there's been tweaks, but truly no major overhauls at all.
On that note, I just have to know one thing you have to answer for me. You were getting videotapes in the last game, right? Like as the secret collectible?
Yes.
Kids aren't going to know what a videotape is. Like what is this? What are you collecting in this one?
They should know what a videotape is.
Exactly.
That's
they will Google it.
So you're going to keep the videotapes.
If they don't know how, they will have to play in this game. If they go to mommy and daddy, what is this crazy black?
It's really like, all right, sit a while and listen. Let me tell you about the olden days where we had tracking. Like,
I put in like a link to Wikipedia for what it is. Like,
you didn't have to deal with buffering. That was a good thing.
Yeah.
I will say, like, not revealing too much, but that is part of honoring the nostalgia of the game and bringing it to now, is like, just like the videotape, it's there. How do we honor that and have it represented through UI, through the game itself? And I think you're going to see that there's these nice little touches that just really, to the older player, is going to be like, this is amazing. I'm glad they were paying attention to these details. To the younger player, they're just like, this looks cool. You know what I mean? Like, this is awesome.
A little bit different track here, but in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, they had the character customizer, and you guys have said you're still keeping that in. Have you guys changed up the system? It's the original one was it gave you what you needed, but are you guys going in depth with features on that? Is that something you guys are willing to talk about?
We looked at all the customization options that we had, so that was a good starting point. and we've taken certain things that we think players will expect in terms of additional features. I don't think we can go into too much detail right now, but what I can tell you is what you remember, you will definitely get as a starting point.
Okay.
And we definitely customization. Like if you think about the franchise, they were ahead of their time, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to create a skater, create a park, and that is the benchmark. And all we do is really get to that and add as many opportunities as possible.
For sure. And will your customizable character, will that go into the first game too, in the remaster? Okay.
Yeah, totally. It's one skater to rule them all. Multiple,
yeah.
Or
but
four,
progression is on account. Yeah.
So you guys have a very strong history with this series. What was it like when either Tony or Activision came to you guys and were like, we're looking to bring this back?
Some time ago, someone patted me on the back, who also has a history. Our creative director, Brent Gibson, he has a history. Him and I had the same first project 18 years ago at VV, and he patted me on the back and he whispered to my ear like, "Leo, Tony Hawk, yes, let's do it." Like, no questions, man. Like, when do I get started? Let's do it.
And for me, I mean, I'm from Canada originally, and then when I moved to the States, it was to work at Neversoft, and my first game working at Neversoft was American Wasteland, then Project 8 and Proving Ground. And, it was at the time where like the team was still, yeah, that's near the end of the series, but it was, going back to your question, but like it was the annual franchise, and we had a lot of I remember it being some of my favorite times being in game development, because it's like, what are we doing this year? What are we doing to like change it up or like add on to this already universally loved game, and to be able, my lifelong friends, are from that studio, and I still keep in contact all the time with them. And, it's such an honor to be able to like, and that's all I think. I mean, it is also a responsibility. I'm like, I just want to do this franchise right and I'm like for everyone that I know that has had history in it, I just want them to be proud. And there is still that community of like old Neversofters. The company doesn't exist anymore, but there's still like group, like we all still talk. It was such a great, community that, again, it's like I to me, it's just like I love, and I'm honored to be able to revisit the franchise like this, and hopefully, keep it going.
Yeah, and to me, it does mean a lot, because the franchise really put VV on the map, right? And it's what got me to VV 18 years ago. They brought me over for the handheld version, and they offered me a level design job, and I took it. I thought it was going to be a year contract, but it became 18 years later, And the first 8 years of my career was Tony Hawk, like handheld, DS, like all the Tony Hawk games, which were, well received. We shifted franchises, and now we're back. And I want to do that early history justice. Like we know what we're doing. We've had the experience, and we know the fans want this, and that helps a lot.
Yeah, we just got off the phone with, or Zoom, whatever you call this, with Tony. And I told him, I was like, I hope this is the foundation. Like, I really do think this franchise, these action sports titles have staying power, like the Maddens, right? Like, I would play these every year if they're done right. I hope you guys execute to that point where this is a new beginning. Tony was telling us like he's ready to make sequels, so you guys got to get ready. But yeah, all the best of luck with you guys. I know the release is right around the corner. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Thank you.
I can't wait to feel how it is. Again, I'm nervous with this frame rate. Like, I used to blame the game's frame rate for whenever I'd bail, and now I can't do it.
You won't have that excuse anymore. That's for sure. Honestly, it feels like butter. Honestly, like that's again, it developing the game. Like that's what one of the things I love about it. Like when I'm picking up the controller and cruising through the game, it's like one of the best games to work on, because you actually like can just always pick up the controller and have fun, and it feels great. I think I know everyone's going to be stoked honestly. Like, I love that everyone's just seen the trailer, everyone's seen some footage, but it's like, you're right. Like, when people have it in their hands, we're not going to disappoint.
Yeah, seeing the reception, it was a nice morale, powwow to the team. Like, oh wow, they're really into this, right? And many of us are like, oh man, we can't wait till you get your hands on it.
Well, thanks for taking the time, guys. Again, best of luck finishing up the game,
We
and
appreciate it.
stay safe. And
Yeah, for sure.
hopefully we get to talk again soon about more projects.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it.